All right, YouTube. This is Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit. I want to do a story, and the story is relevant considering that in Chicago, the old Block 6 will be closing out their trial. Now, these types of stories are so prevalent on YouTube that it's called Chiracology, where people talk about the war in Chirac, the war in Chicago. And there's a lot of people who don't even know that this went on. You know what I mean? And one thing about the internet, it allows you to bring other parts of the world, other parts of the country right to you. You can see what's going on. Now, if you don't know, there are 6 people on trial right now for deleting FBG Duck. FBG Duck's mother, her name is Sheena Wheatley, but they call her Mama Duck. And she's advocating so hard for justice. But I'm going to do a reaction to Trap Lord Ross's. I'm going to do a reaction to Trap Lord Ross video because we're going to see what justice really looks like if you're from O Block. Have anybody ever asked, what does justice look like for O Blockians, people that's from O Block? This story is deep, very deep. You know what I mean? And you can't hate on Trap Lord Ross, who, if you don't know, he's from the UK. To some of my viewers, they might not be familiar with the story. He's from the UK. But his research and his ability to study urban politics has been his claim to fame. So I'm going to do a reaction to his documentary about the deletion of FBG Duck. First, if you like this video, put a 1 in the comments. That way I can do a follow-up, because I'm not going to be able to do the whole video reaction. Is because Trap Lord Ross video is 3 hours long. His documentary is 3 hours long. But I'm going to try to move you through this story. If you like the story, you want me to finish it and do the follow-up, because the trial, like I said, should be finished this week. But let me tell you my opinion before we start. Because even though they're going to trial for FBG Duck and they want justice for FBG Duck, they don't realize FBG Duck already got justice. He got street justice. He got the same type of justice he wanted for others. So follow along with me on this story and look at the evidence and the material that Trap Lord Ross gathered to make this documentary. So this is for fair usage under the 1976 Copyright Act. It's for entertainment purposes, and I'm just going to give my commentary. Let's see, did FBG Duck get justice already? He wasn't a good guy, as they like to play.
This video is sponsored by Kamikoto.
Hey guys, if you want to see my uncut version of this video, including moment-by-moment analysis of crime scene footage, which is far too shocking to show you on YouTube, it's available over on my Patreon for just $2. That's patreon.com/TraplawRoss. Thanks. On the 4th of August 2020, Chicago rapper FBG Duck was gunned down in broad daylight. Duck was left on the ground dying next to a jammed pistol, with dozens of bullets in his body bleeding out for over 20 minutes. But this was no ordinary gangland hit, because that spot where Duck would lay fighting for his life was outside of a Dolce & Gabbana store in Chicago's Gold Coast, a luxury shopping district in the north of Chicago, miles away from the blocks on the city's south side, where gang warfare is rampant and the streets are considered some of the most dangerous in America. The assassination of FBG Duck in this manner conjures up images of Chicago gang warfare in the 20s, when the likes of Al Capone were running in the streets of Chicago, massacring ops and leaving bodies all over the city, decades before drill music had even been invented. Many people thought that such a brazen murder in an upmarket tourist spot would have been an open and shut case, but shockingly, Duck's murder would go unsolved for over a year. Well, unsolved by the police, because over the course of that year, a number of young men linked to the crime and the gang responsible would run free, bragging about the crime and celebrating Duck's death all over social media and in hit songs. Some songs celebrating Duck's murder would land on the Billboard chart and earn RIAA certifications, while other songs that hinted direct involvement would fly under the radar. Members of the gang allegedly responsible for killing Duck would go live on Instagram, telling viewers that they're smoking on Duck, a common insult to the deceased in modern-day drill music. But less common in this case, one member would even go as far as to flex shoes hinting at his involvement in the crime on Instagram. Those who were allegedly responsible for killing Duck were so confident that they wouldn't be caught that they boasted about the murder for over a year. But why would anyone do this? Well, the pride and deep-seated need for revenge in a gang war that's seen dozens of bodies drop on both sides is definitely part of it. But in this story, it's much deeper and darker, because it seems that part of the reason that these men wanted to dance on Duck's grave so badly after he was murdered was shockingly for the clout. The recognition that they received on social media and in the drill music community for being real killers, real steppers, savages, gangsters. This was the reputation that these young men were looking for in the streets that they lived in. However, in the end, when you commit a crime as bold as this, it really is just a matter of time until you get caught. And while it took the FBI over a year to put their suspects in custody, it was only a matter of weeks before the fans, Redditors, commenters, and YouTubers would solve the case, putting it out there for the whole world to see with alarming accuracy who was involved in the murder of FBG Duck. So in today's video, we're going to take a closer look at why anyone would want to kill FBG Duck so badly that they would do it in the middle of a busy street in broad daylight, in front of dozens of civilians armed with smartphones.
Now, I'm going to chime in on him right now. He said, what would make people want to do something to Duck so bad that they would go downtown and they would crash out? You know what I mean? And a lot of people who don't like King Von or Little Dirk or don't like O Block or don't like BDs in particular, let me tell you, Duck gave pressure to all his ops in Chicago. He had people around him like TB, Terry Berry. He had another flunky around him, can't get right. And he sent them on missions. And they went on missions to delete people from O Block, because that's what they click was on. They click was GDK. So we're gonna see, did Duck really get justice? And is his mama just a clout chaser?
Why the men who allegedly did it would want to brag so openly about such an evil act of violence, and how their desperate need for clout on social media would ultimately play a big part in their downfall, with the feds swooping in, likely bringing a racketeering case with so much comprehensive evidence that it's hard to believe that anybody involved in this case is going to see the outside of a prison cell for the rest of their lives. This is the story of FBG Duck, aka Big Clout. But before we get into the details, a quick word from today's sponsor.
Kamekoto, they are real.
I ain't trying to hear that.
Many fallen members who have passed away, who we'll be talking about shortly, and even more so, beyond the inner circle of King Von and the O-Block natives who are relevant to this story, videos exist apparently documenting all of the members of O-Block, with the group's membership apparently exceeding 100 in total. And these are some of the names that you'll be hearing the likes of King Von shouting out and representing in his music. So we're not covering every single O-Block member that's ever lived in this story, but we are focusing on the names that you're likely going to be hearing referenced in King Von's music. Aside from shouting out the names of rappers that he regularly takes on drills, King Von's lyrics are also famously littered with disses aimed at his ops and their block on 63rd. O-Block or Parkway Gardens is considered 64th, hence why King Von has a giant 64 tattooed on both of his shoulders, while 63rd is a nearby street that connects with St. Lawrence Avenue and Eberhard Avenue, areas known to be opposing gang sets to O-Block. And when it comes to O-Block's opposition, there really was no bigger op than FBG Duck. FBG Duck started rapping around 2011, long before Von had ever picked up a microphone, teaming up with other local rappers on their side of the map, forming the street rap collective FBG or Flyboy Gang, rapping with the likes of Lil J, Billionaire Black, FBG Cash, FBG Dutchie, and Wooski. Another name this group would go by is the Clout Boys, with FBG Duck himself being referred to as Big Clout. Now, one of the first things that Duck did in the rap game that got him attention was a music video that he dropped in 2011, only hours after the murder of O.D. Perry, a young man from Parkway Gardens, with O-Block literally being named in his memory for O.D. Duck from the rival hood would release a...
Now we're going to start there. He said that as soon as O.D. Perry of O-Block, or it was Parkway Gardens before they named O-Block after him, he immediately dropped a diss track after OD's demise. That's the first thing that Duck did. That's the first thing FBG Duck did. Is the moment after O.D. Perry was smoked, he made a song and dropped a diss track. That's number one.
Song soon after to frost his enemies.
Son of these days, man, you gotta use your head in the street. Praying tough, then you gon' end up dead in the streets.
So, the guys from O-Block identify as BDs, or Black Disciples, and the ones over on 63rd, St. Lawrence and Eberhard identify as GDs, or Gangster Disciples. Now, I did a breakdown on the history of the BDs and the GDs, going all the way back to the 60s in another video on my channel if you're interested in learning more about the history, but essentially, BDs identify as GDK, or GD Killers, and GDs identify as BDK, or BD Killers. Now, it didn't take long for Duck to pick up some attention in the streets and through his music, quickly making him one of the biggest GD-affiliated rappers in the city. There was a period of time where another young man called Lil Jojo put the GDs on the map after releasing a song called BDK, becoming a Chicago anthem for GDs who wanted to kill BDs. Unfortunately, as a result of his affiliations and actions in the streets, Lil Jojo ended up being murdered in 2012. Being the most famous GD rapper in the city was dangerous, but FBG Duck wasn't put off. After Jojo's death, Duck vowed to keep the BDK movement alive in his music, as seen in numerous tweets. Being the
Point number two. Duck vowed to keep the BDK movement alive. BDK means Black Disciple, the leaders, or people who hunt and destroy Black disciples. He vowed to keep a movement alive that threatened everything about a neighborhood. Think about that. I'm going to keep the movement alive that we're going to terminate that whole block over there. Let's continue.
flag bearer for a movement calling to K all of the BDs in the city, naturally made Duck a target for his opposition. And as part of the ongoing war between BD rappers from O-Block and the GD rappers from 63rd, rappers from both sides would regularly go back and forth on social media for the whole world to see, with Duck and King Von from O-Block having numerous public spats on Twitter going back as early as 2012. This includes one famous exchange supposedly one day before King Von killed KI, a female GD that Duck was friends with. But Duck knew the consequences of being the top GD in his city. He'd been shot numerous numerous times in the streets of Chicago, and his head probably had the biggest bounty on it that had ever been seen over the last 10 years of Chicago's gang violence. And Duck knew it. He lived in fear every day, but he didn't let it stop him. In fact, he told DJ Vlad in a Vlad TV interview back in 2017 that he thought about being killed every single day.
I know motherfuckers want to hurt me. Motherfuckers want to take my life. Of course I know motherfuckers want to kill me. I'm a very disrespectful person.
Duck would tell his IG Live viewers that he is hood to the core, and whilst most rappers
When people tell you who they are, believe them. He told you, I'm a very disrespectful person. That take a lot in a statement because I'm not a very disrespectful person. I'm a very respectable person because I know that disrespect can lead you down a path of destruction because people don't take kindly to disrespect. In this video that I'm doing a reaction to is showing you why them boys is on trial, that they're not guilty of what they're being accused of. It's impossible when the person you're being accused of taking out had vowed to take out all your family, all your friends, your whole neighborhood, and you. And then he sings about it. Let's continue.
have the goal to make it out of the hood, he doesn't plan to ever leave.
Last time I checked, the goal in the hood is to make it out, that motherfucker. Stupid ass people. Not to always stay in there. But I'm a hood nigga. And I ain't running from no motherfucker. So I don't gotta go nowhere. I ain't scared of nothing. Nobody in this world scared me. You wanna know why? Cause the nigga bleed just like me.
It's incredibly sad that even with the foresight that he clearly had, Duck couldn't just put his pride to one side and get out of the city of Chicago before it claimed his life. But in the end, the war in Chicago truly is just one long game of last man standing. And sadly today, Duck is no longer with us, and those accused of doing it are likely going to spend the rest of their lives in prison cells. But I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, what on earth would cause two rival neighborhoods to want to kill each other so bad, to the point where they don't care about getting killed themselves, facing life in prison, or killing an innocent bystander in the process?
Now, I want you to think about what he said. What would make these young people so reckless that they don't care if they go to jail, they don't care if they get took out, they don't care? It's like when you see people and they talk, and then a person may say, like, I'm an older person, so I don't really get into confrontations like I did when I was a young man. But when a person tell you it's on site, it's on site. You know what I mean? You know, in the 80s, I remember being involved in situations that happened in the middle of Northland Mall. Wherever you bump into them, it's up. FBG Duck knew it was up. But his ego and the fact that he was behind the deletion of a lot of people from O Block. See, he was one of them type of people that put other people up to do his dirty work, and he just stood behind. You know what I mean? And laughed and chuckled because he was behind the whole situation. And most of the time, when people is like that, they think they invincible because they always sending somebody else to do something, because those people they send out are going to catch the consequences. So they think. But everybody knows you got to cut the head off the snake. Forget the tail.
Well, the unfortunate truth is, so much tit-for-tat bloodshed has taken place on both sides of this war that it's important to remember that in this story, we are looking at young men who grew up knowing nothing other than violence, murder, and suffering since they were children. Many of the young men growing up on both sides of this war witnessed many of their teenage friends be murdered in the streets by rivals. And with the Chicago Police Department leaving around 60% of the city's murders unsolved, and the black community particularly underserved when it comes to justice, it's almost hard to blame these young men who grew up knowing nothing but violence and revenge. This is a cycle of violence that started over a decade ago, long before anyone had made a drill song about it. So, to truly understand why FBG Duck was stalked to his grave by killers that literally lived only a 2-minute drive away from where he grew up, we have to take a closer look and appreciate the dozens of young men and essentially children who have been murdered on both sides of this war over the last 10 years. And I tell you what, as you're going to see as this story develops, the war in Chicago is much closer to an armed conflict in the Middle East than your typical.
The interesting part about this is that Trap Lord Ross, all the way from the UK, can see that it was a war. It was a war, an armed conflict. I want you to continue to watch this video and see how many lives were lost and how much destruction came, and you decide whether or not this was a war or not.
Hip-hop beef. Now, if you've already seen the previous video that I did on the war between O Block and Toucaville, then feel free to skip this part of the video. That video covered the ongoing back and forth between O Block and the street crews coming out of 63rd between the years of 2010 and 2014. Toucaville is another name of the STL EBT sets on 63rd, with the name Toucaville itself being derived from another young man from that area who was sadly gunned down as a teenager by the name Touca. You've likely heard his name being dissed numerous times in songs by rappers from O Block. In fact, as part of the trend of a block being renamed after a young man who lost their life in the war, O Block wasn't always called O Block. It actually used to be called Wick City, which stood for Wild, Insane and Crazy. But just like Toucaville, Wick City ended up being renamed O Block after the murder of young member O.D. Perry. So let's take a quick look back at that video to get up to speed on how the early days of this feud begun, so that we can remember some of the names of those who lost their lives in the early days of this beef, with their memory contributing to the careers of King Von, FBG Duck, and their respective crews.
You gotta stop him and get my life back. You'd be
Now, it's hard to find one cataclysmic event that has caused the enormous wave of beef between these two groups. What seems to be the reality is that some of this beef dates all the way back to high school days, where members from these opposing areas would get into pretty basic schoolyard fights. However, these small, local schoolyard beefs would unfortunately escalate into deadly violence when those involved became old enough to get guns. But all the way back in the early 2010s, King Von had been repping his BD affiliation on social media to the fullest, holding down the blocks of Parkway and showing love to his gang for the entire world to see.
Yeah, bitch. Yeah.
Other big names in the Wick City BD set include feared supposed shooters like HK and J Money or J Munna. Then of course there's King Von's beloved BD bro T Roy, who is apparently a bit of a dynamic duo along with Von, with the close bond between these two becoming very relevant later in the story. And in fact, this is the exact reason why even right up until his death in 2020, King Von used to go by the name V-Roy on Twitter, and the fact that he comes from Wick City is why his Twitter handle still is @KingVon from the Wick. Basically, King Von and T-Roy loved their gang and they loved their block, holding it down with other Wick City members like Big A, OD, Trey 5, Platoon, Boss Money, Sharoid, Duke, who's actually been mentioned in numerous King Von lyrics, Rah Rah, aka Breezy, and Boss Top, who also became a rapper like Keith. The Wick City BDs were very well known for throwing up GDK hand signs repeatedly to show the world that they were GD killers who were very much indeed down to ride and kill.
GDK shit, man. Everybody got the voice in their hand, man. You feel me? GDK. Broke boys.
So, who were the GD boys that these guys wanted to K so badly? Well, over on the STL EBT side, they were up against a few names who you might know if you're well versed in Chicago drill culture. The first to come to mind is Jakira Barnes, also known as Key or KI, a young female hitter who was good friends with fellow member Tuka growing up. Another member was FBG Butter, who along with KI were also known as a bit of a dynamic duo dubbed the Twins. Other members actually went by FBG or Flyboy Gang, an STL EB clique more focused on making music, which included other names like FBG Brick, and of course the legendary FBG Duck. Another musically inclined member who repped FBG was Lil J, who lived in STL and would later become more clicked up with them, but mainly had beef with 600 that kind of ran adjacent to this feud. They had Lil B and Wooski, who had actually been dubbed King of the Ops. There was Boss Trell and Lil Doc. On the 12th of January 2011, 15-year-old Shondale Gregory, known on the streets as Tuka, was waiting at a bus stop at the 600 block on East 63rd Street. At a certain point, a dark-coloured vehicle pops up and somebody hops out wearing a half mask. Some have said that this person exchanged a few words with Tuka, but ultimately
I want you to follow his line of events. I want you to follow everything that he says happening.
within seconds, they had shot Tuka multiple times and fled the scene. STL member FBG Duck was actually close friends with Tuka, saying that after hearing about his death, he actually ran to the scene of the crime, where in a tragic moment, he even got to see his slain brother before he was taken away.
Me and him clicked. Like, that was one of my real close friends. Like, every day, like, spend the night at his house. He spend the night at mine. And my cousin came in there running to me, crying and shit, telling me, your friend just got killed. You feel me? Then I ran all the way from 62nd and Wabash all the way to 63rd and St. Lawrence. Shake them right there on the floor. You know how that shit go, broke right down.
In response to this tragic loss, STL EBT would rename their hood Tukaville in his honor and as a commitment for revenge. And members like FBG Brick would rep Tuka's memory to the fullest.
Do you represent Tukaville? Oh, to the fullest. That's what I do it for. That's what it's always been about since day one. Just Tuka. Like, my homie was 15 years old when he got killed. Never hurt nobody, never did nothing, you know what I'm saying?
As you may well know, Tuka's name has been endlessly dragged in hip-hop over the years. Now, I'm not going to get into every instance or drama over this happening, but the story goes initially the GDs from Tukaville, people like FBG Duck, were apparently saying that they were smoking Tuka out of respect for him, a nod to the old story that Tupac's crew, the Outlaws, smoked his ashes in a blunt after he died. But the BD ops from Wick City immediately decided to flip this and start making fun of Tukaville. The most immediate and iconic diss, of course, was Chief Keef's song 300, where he says "fuck Tuka gang." And from here, other members continued the disrespect. One of Tuka's closest friends growing up was a young girl named K.I., but you might know her better as the young girl who became a teenage assassin, supposedly racking up 17 bodies by 17. Story goes, it was the death of Tuka that actually turned K.I. into a cold-blooded killer. Apparently coached in shooting by her cousin, fellow Tukaville GD Boss Trell, and maneuvering in the streets by her older brother Seaball, a bloodthirsty teenage K.I. would soon become a bona fide hitter for the Tukaville GDs. Hellbent on getting revenge for Tuka, K.I. would eventually find it in the form of OD. At around 11:35 p.m. on August the 10th, 2011, 20-year-old O.D. Perry, respected Wick City member, was shot and killed near Parkway Gardens on 400 block of East 64th Street. O.D. suffered multiple gunshot wounds, including one to the neck, and was pronounced dead at Stroger Hospital within an hour of the shooting. Just like Tuka, in his memory, the Wick City B-Deans renamed Parkway Gardens O-Block, in his memory, committing to avenge him. Of course, the likes of Chief Keef and King Von immortalized O-Block, as it is now known today, in their music forever. The killing of O.D. Perry was supposedly revenge for the killing of Tuka, with this apparently being exemplified by the fact that it went down on Tuka's very birthday. O.D.'s killers were never apprehended, but from here, rumors begun to swirl that this was actually the first victim of teenage Tukaville assassin K.I. And one of the people pushing these rumors was, of course, Lil J, who had apparently shared the following image along with a caption saying, "Shout out to them twins that made O-Block," referring to FBG Butter and K.I. However, for the record, no one has been convicted of this crime, and there was never any proof tying K.I. or Butter to the killing of O.D. Perry. Well, actually, many years later, a Freedom of Information request did reveal that the cops did officially name K.I. and Boss Trell as subjects on the report. This came after an unnamed informant named them as the shooters in 2016, years after they had passed. At 6:47 p.m. on February the 12th, 2012, Sherroyd Liggins of O-Block was discovered with a gunshot wound to the head at 6400 block of South King Drive, just outside Parkway Gardens once again. You're starting to see why they call it the most dangerous block in America now, right? Sherroyd remained in hospital fighting for his life for around 4 days, until February the 20th, when he was unfortunately pronounced dead at Stroger Hospital. No one was ever caught for this crime. However, K.I. has suggested pretty heavily on Twitter that Boss Trell from Tukaville was the one responsible, with some of the internet detectives over on Chiracology digging deeper into these tweets and suggesting that when this shooting went down, Boss Trell had actually shot Sherroyd from all the way across the street. Impeccable aim, apparently the result of his use of a gun with a red laser beam sight on it to improve his accuracy. That gun itself apparently even featured in the Lil J FBG Duck music video for the song Critical, a Chief Keef diss that actually dropped months after this happened. Combine this with the fact that Boss Trell himself seemed to be bragging about the incident on Twitter later in the year, with KI also tweeting references to that red beam. A frankly brazen attack, which naturally only beget more bloodshed between O-Block and Toucaville in the months that followed. Now, I've got some extra info for you here, because Sharoid, who was actually murdered early on in this beef, is actually the brother of C Murder, another O-Block member who was arrested by the feds for the murder of FBG Duck. We saw C Murder tribute to his fallen brother on Instagram regularly, so with this in mind, you can understand why he would have held a years-long grudge against the opposing gang who took the life of his brother. But it didn't end there, because the bloodshed in the streets would continue, with the likes of King Von apparently playing a major part in taking the lives of enemies from the opposing area. On October the 13th, 2012, a 17-year-old boy named Modell McCambry was walking along the street with his cousin on the way to meet a girl. This went down on the 6300 block of South Rhodes Avenue. At around 9:30 p.m, somebody walked up and opened fire, hitting Modell in the chest. He too later died in Stroger Hospital. But who was responsible, you ask? Well, many have suggested that it was actually O-Block future rap superstar King Von, mainly due to the fact that he himself had made numerous tweets to Toucaville op Wooski, where Von seems to hint at him, or at least his crew, being responsible for Modell's death. In fact, Von was actually rumored to have been present for numerous shootings carried out by the O-Block during this period of time, which naturally built him up a feared reputation as a member who was always down to do some dirt. He himself even famously bragged in his songs to have a total of 7 bodies under his belt. Yes, it is thought that King Von himself actually carried out this killing, with Von around this time developing not only a talent for murder as part of the deadly ongoing war in his hood, but also a habit of bragging about the bodies that he had caught in the streets publicly, mainly using social media and sites like Twitter to brag about his exploits in the streets. Von would even go back and forth directly with ops online for everyone to see, including this iconic Twitter exchange with rival rapper Wooski about who has more bodies. Von would tweet things around this time that he just wants to kill, and that apparently women don't want to be with him when they find out that he's a murderer. Bragging about dirt in the streets on social media is a precedent that would be set early in this story and would continue throughout the entirety of the 10-year war. It seems that the young men involved in committing these crimes are surprisingly eager to brag and boast about their exploits online, presumably doing this for status or clout or ego, and it would be this habit that would play a huge part in their eventual downfall, but not before a whole lot more killing had taken place. On October the 30th, 2012, a man named Derek Johnson, also known on the streets as P5 or Crack, was gunned down. Now, he wasn't actually Toucaville, but a member of Jarrow City, a Chicago gang set north of Toucaville with a long history dating to back before this feud even began. But apparently, P5 was out walking on Toucaville turf, specifically the 6200 block of South Eberhart Avenue, where apparently J Money, King Von, and Big A of O-Block were lurking in the area looking for Toucaville ops to attack. In fact, only a day before this incident went down, King Von himself had tweeted that he was out trying to catch more bodies so that he could catch up with fellow O-Block shooter T-Roy. So story goes that when these O-Block shooters were out lurking, they spotted P5 around 9:13 in the morning, opening fire and hitting him multiple times. Some have even gone as far as to suggest that he was actually hit 6 times in the head and 9 times in the body. P5 was taken to Stroger Hospital, once again pronounced dead within the hour. And from here, the wanton violence between O-Block and Toucaville was far from over, as the O-Block side would continue to seek retribution for the attacks that had been done on them, and so soon after the P5 incident, O-Block would appear to claim a high-profile member of Toucaville. 17-year-old Rodney Stewart, aka Boss Trell, aka the red beam slinging marksman who'd allegedly killed Sharoid from way across the street for Toucaville, was apparently planning to flee town, tweeting about being excited for a fresh start on the 6th of November, even purchasing a bus ticket with the intention of leaving town on the 10th. But unfortunately, only 2 days before his scheduled departure, on the 8th of November, Boss Trell was found face down in an alley in the 2600 block of West 83rd Street. He'd been shot in the back of the head. Now, in case you couldn't tell, the location of this shooting is a long way from O-Block and Toucaville, and it's actually been suggested by some that J Money and T-Roy were actually responsible for coordinating a setup of Boss Trell via an allegedly disloyal ex-girlfriend, apparently luring him well away from Toucaville with the promise of meeting a girl, but when he arrived, BT was shot in the head and left for dead. His grandmother said the identity of the shooter is not a secret, but no witnesses were willing to step up. He didn't actually pass away immediately and apparently was left fighting for his life brain dead in the hospital for several days. This was followed by T-Roy of O-Block, who is widely believed to have been responsible for this incident, mockingly tweeting on the 8th of November, "No, Trell, stay alive." Meanwhile, Toukerville affiliates like FBG Cash were paying their respects to Boss Trail, but ultimately he passed away later that day. Meanwhile, of course, over on O Block, they were celebrating for having gotten retribution for their fallen brother Sherroyd, but Boss Trail was of course a devastating loss for Toukerville, and he would soon be avenged in spectacular fashion. As on September the 2nd, 2013, Jerome Wood, also known as J Money, from O Block was allegedly set up, ironically in a way not dissimilar to how Boss Trail had been set up, with J Money apparently visiting a location on the...
If you're following this, if you follow the story this far, it gets deeper. I've seen the story, that's why I'm not looking at it like how y'all looking at it. But in this story, we're talking about justice. We're talking about truth. Because people want to make FBG Duck and the guys from 63rd out to be victims. And nobody is really paying attention to how much they were antagonists and how much they fueled this war.
6600 block of South Rhodes Avenue around 2 p.m. Allegedly set up by a girl on the ops turf, legend has it that J Money was expecting to see a woman he knew, but arrived to the location to be greeted by Lil B and KI from Toukerville. He apparently attempted to flee down a gangway into an adjacent property, but he was unfortunately shot in the head, collapsing outdoors and not making it. Tweets from other gang members have suggested that this incident was direct retaliation for P5, as well as Boss Trail, and KI actually tweeted after this incident about shooting people in the back of the head, tweets which many people thought suggested direct involvement by KI, referring to this exact incident. That's as far as things went in that Toukerville video. However, things would eventually catch up with that female assassin, KI, as she'd be gunned down on April the 11th, 2014. And for 7 years, many people, including myself, speculated on whether King Von had been involved with the killing with some assistance from fellow O-Block hitter Big A. And only after his death in 2021 did Chicago police release documents appearing to confirm that King Von himself was indeed the killer of KI, with apparently multiple witnesses pinning Von as the shooter, but the cops ultimately didn't have enough evidence to bring an official charge against Von at this point. But that wouldn't matter, because only around a month and a half after the murder of KI, King Von would catch yet another body, but this time end up in jail. A story which once again I have already covered in a detailed video on this channel. May 29th, 2014, a birthday party is taking place in Englewood, Chicago, on the 5700 block of South LaSalle Street. And in attendance at this party are 4 men. A man named Malcolm Stuckey, who's chilling at this party with 2 unnamed friends of his. And also at the party is Davon Bennett, better known nowadays as King Von, the rapper from Chicago's O Block. Now, at a certain point during this party, Malcolm and his homies are steady eyeballing King Von, who decides at this point to briefly leave the party. He goes away and allegedly gets his homie Michael Wade, aka Big Mike. Now, Big Mike later told the police that he had gone to this party with King Von with the intention of acting as muscle for Von, who had planned to confront the person who had been mean-mugging him. And when Von and Big Mike got back to the party around 45 minutes later, they parked up in an alleyway. Allegedly, at this point, they both got out with loaded guns and proceeded to the front porch of the property, where they opened fire on Malcolm Stuckey and the 2 other men. Apparently, they ended up firing over 20 shots. Malcolm Stuckey was unfortunately fatally wounded in the head. Meanwhile, the 2 other men attempted to flee, one into the house and the other down the street. However, unfortunately, once again, both were hit by gunshots, but ultimately they both survived. At this point, allegedly, Von and Big Mike ran back to their car and fled the scene. But of course, this was a serious charge that neither of them could run from for long. Within a few weeks, they were both in custody. So, King Von would be picked up for murder and end up sitting in jail for around 3.5 years. Eventually, he would miraculously manage to beat those charges on a technicality. But while Von was locked up, the war would continue to play out in the streets. And with one of O-Block's most fearsome hitters, King Von, locked up, the block would be vulnerable to its enemies. This would ultimately lead to the deaths of a number of people who were very close to Von and his friends, who we introduced at the start of this story. In the face of yet more of their childhood friends being murdered, allegedly at the hands of their rivals from 63rd, the young men from O-Block, with no guidance, support, and nothing better to do than seek revenge against those who had killed their friends, formed a new gang focused solely on get-backs, getting retribution and revenge for their friends whose lives had been taken. This is the birth of Get Back Gang.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products. It's Amazon's other company, Audible. Audible pays me $8,000 to $10,000 every single month in
Now we entered into another chapter. we entered into the chapter of the get back game. Get back means that you're getting back, you're clapping back. I mean, it speaks for itself. But this is the birth of the get back game.
Whilst Von had been sat in jail awaiting progress on the murder charge against him for killing Malcolm Stuckey, rival gangs from the surrounding areas were plotting attacks on the most beloved members from O Block, and soon lives would be lost. On July the 17th, 2016, Chino from O Block, real name Chirino Gatewood, is murdered in a Sunday morning shooting on the 5700 block of South Union, after a car allegedly pulled up with someone asking Chino where they could buy weed before opening fire, emptying the rest of the clip into his body on the ground, with Chino later dying in St. Bernard Hospital. There's been a great deal of debate online about what set specifically had something to do with this killing, but regardless of who was responsible, what we do know is that Chino from O Block was the brother of BJ, hence why he goes by the name Chino Mafia on Instagram. So here we have yet another person from O Block who's lost a relative and is likely burning for some kind of revenge. And sadly, the bloodshed for O Block would continue all the way through 2016, as Big A, the O Block hitter, who is apparently a feared member accompanying King Von to the KI hit, is killed himself, allegedly by members associated with 63rd, being shot in the face at Sammy's Grill restaurant just across the street from O Block at around 3:10 a.m. Big A was thought to be a big bounty for his opposition because of his alleged involvement with KI's death, with him apparently even sporting the new nickname Ask KI after her death, with it even being rumoured that one of the shooters that took out Big A is indeed a blood relative of KI. At this point, O Block had already suffered a lot of losses in the streets, but the most devastating of all would come in 2017, when King Von's best friend and one of the most feared shooters in O Block, T-Roy, would lose his life. T-Roy, or Troy, was apparently deep in the streets. He had the word Savage tattooed on his neck and went by O Block Savage on social media, describing himself on video as a real shooter.
Shoot you. No problem. I will fucking shoot you. Yes, I will. So if you see me and ain't no shit, leave me the fuck alone. You don't know if I was on your ass, because I ain't gonna get the motherfucking, looking at you, none of that shit. I'm just gonna scorn you, dumbass. Scorn, bitch.
Boss Top from O Block would later tell Fuchsia's TV in an interview that Troy was a real fearless demon.
Roy just was different, you know what I'm saying? He was a real enforcer. Like Shorty was right, he was out here for real. Shorty was a savage on her own. Another motherfucker that was fearless. Like, he had no fear. Get back, gang!
So apparently T-Roy was truly putting in work in the war in the streets. Shortly after tweeting an angry face on Valentine's Day 2017, T-Roy, real name James Johnson, would travel to a sports casual activewear store, where some have said he might have been shopping for an outfit, while others have claimed that he was op shopping, i.e. lurking in a store that he knows his rivals frequent, hoping to catch and murder them. But the story goes that the person that T-Roy was looking for spotted him first and was quicker on the draw when they ultimately came face to face. Gunfire erupted inside of the store, with T-Roy unfortunately losing his life. Only a brief moment of surveillance video was captured and released, showing the moment that T-Roy was caught off guard in the store by a man and an accomplice. T-Roy would be shot in the chest, later dying at the Northwestern Memorial Hospital at the young age of 23. T-Roy was beloved on his block, with the most successful Chicago drill rappers at the time honoring him in tweets. He was mourned by Chief Keef, Lil Reese, Lil Durk, as well as O Block members like C Murder and King Von, who tributed him on Twitter with a caption that read, "Rest up T-Roy, real savage." This love was apparently reciprocated by T-Roy whilst he was still alive, because while King Von was locked up, T-Roy's whole Twitter page was dedicated to Von's freedom, with it still looking like this to this day, years after his death. While he was still alive...
If you've been following me up to this point, and you've been following the story, I don't know how us as adults, like older people, we really don't know what's going on with the young people. But go deep into this story, because you have 6 young men from O Block going to trial for what happened to FBG Duck in downtown Chicago, and they playing Duck, or they playing it like they didn't like Chicago police and politicians and the public didn't know what was going on. They didn't care as long as these young brothers was offing each other in the hood. They only cared when it went downtown. When it went downtown, somebody must pay, because at that point, the Caucasians feared for their safety, But they say these Negroes brazen enough to come down here and do it to Duck. But Duck was a special case, and that's what I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to show you that Duck already got justice. All of them is getting justice. They all are reaping what they sow. They all are misguided, but they are youth. You know what I mean? You got to guide them. I mean, you couldn't get them to church because look at your pastors. Look at the preachers now. Look at all these preachers and the people. Like, you know what your son looking at, how your son looking at you now when you told him, I'm gonna take you to TD Jake's church. You want to take me to TD Jake's church? Nah, I'm straight on that.
T-Roy would regularly post pictures of himself and King Von saying free his brother and right-hand man. Of course, King Von was still in jail when T-Roy was killed, with Von apparently being left broken-hearted, breaking down in his cell. Von would later go live and tell the story about what happened the day that T-Roy died and how Von prepared for vengeance.
Hey, what happened? I mean, they just killed T-Roy. Who? He what? Hey, I'm T-Roy. They just killed T-Roy. Oh, I got to break it down on King Dave. That shit. I couldn't help it. They hugging me. These some real niggas. You see what I'm saying? We grown ass men. Oh, hold on, boy. That's my best friend, boy. Somebody just killed my best friend while I'm in jail. I'm in that bitch gonna go crazy. Oh, I'm in that bitch. Don't know what's going on. I'm in that bitch getting that. I'm in that bitch getting that. If he get got, there ain't a lot of hope for a lot of niggas. Everybody. Oh, now you everybody dying. Everybody in jail.
This is when it said that Von demanded revenge, and it was at this point that Get Back Gang was formed. Booker from 600 announced on Twitter that there was a lot to come, and blood relatives of T-Roy, HK, Zelmunna, and Slutty would all be eager to see their brother avenged. Now, obviously, given T-Roy's fearsome reputation in the streets, after he died, the opposition was seen celebrating. FBG Duck went live with somebody talking about how they were happy that...
I don't know if you following the story, but he said that T-Roy's brothers, HK, Slutty, and Zelmunna, ironically, T-Roy is gone, HK is gone, Slutty is gone, and Zelmunna is gone. That whole family. Process that. All four brothers are gone. Slutty, he lost his life in Atlanta with King Von. HK was took out by the ops. And they said, Zelmunna off to self. These are our youth people.
they had gotten T-Roy out the way.
Yeah, look on them on here going, good, they so happy in that funny film. No folks know proud, they got him.
Now, what you about to see, this is FBG Duck. And I don't know if Trap Lord Ross really like to say it like it is, because I don't think he really know. I mean, he good at researching. But Duck is finna diss. And he finna get on here and diss the fact that T-Roy was unalived. But it was Duck's flunkies who allegedly did it. Terry Berry and Can't Get Right. Them is his flunkies. They don't do nothing without him putting the stamp of approval on it. That's big clout. And I'm going to say it again. TB and Can't Get Right was his flunkies. Ironically, they are the ones allegedly on tape shooting T-Roy in the store. Let's listen. And people say Duck is innocent. Really? Duck already got his justice. Sorry to say that.
I know I'm on live, G. Shut the fuck up. Could nigga get killed. to a nigga get spill.
Damn, they on here talking about what you think about T-Roy getting popped. Damn, T-Roy got popped? When that happened? When T-Roy get popped? Damn, somebody popped him. Is he dead? Is he dead? Did he die? Damn, merchant, they popped T-Roy. It must don't be, it must ain't that important shit. It ain't all over the internet. I ain't seen shit.
Now, T-Roy was allegedly killed by a gang member by the name of TB, real name Terry Barry, with it being said that he'd been identified by a witness as the shooter in a photo lineup that circulated online. TB would also go on to tweet after the murder, Happy Valentine's Day, and saying that somebody got hit trying to do a hit. TB had actually been pictured numerous times near the murder location, as apparently this was an area that he was known to frequent. This is why it made sense for T-Roy to go there looking for him, but it would also end up, ironically, very close to where he would lose his life too.
So Acorn is a financial tech company. So I bought everyone's gifts today with my.
2017 was a bloody year on the streets of Chicago, as we'd see the murder of numerous individuals, which many believe were part of Get Back Gang's coordinated revenge campaign to avenge T-Roy. Members from O-Block would tweet about an entire summer of Get Backs, even suggesting that to them, killing feels like sex. One of the lives lost during this bloody summer was Poppy, real name Sherrod Rhyme. On the 16th of June 2017, he was killed on the 7th.
Are y'all really watching this? Are you really processing this? These is people's teenage kids. These is young people. These are our children. These are our children, for real. These are our children, our nieces and nephews.
Block of South State, outside the L&P Foods candy warehouse, where he was literally working a shift. After being asked to help a customer load some items into their vehicle, Poppy was standing outside when apparently a gunman jumped out of a car with a ski mask on, executing Poppy with a gunshot to the head, then firing 2 more shots into his body. The supposed shooter in this attack was Heck, or HK, from O-Block, with this incident himself apparently earning him the nickname Headshot King, hence the initials HK. But let me make it clear, this is nothing to be glamorized. The fact that people on the streets of America in 2017 are doing broad daylight headshot executions is something I struggle to wrap my head around. I mean, the insanity of this crime is driven home all the more by the shocking amateur video of the aftermath of this killing in scenes that are far too shocking to show you on YouTube.
And the reason he's saying it like it's so shocking to him is he's from the UK, where they have no guns like that. People don't carry guns in the UK. So to people in other European nations, to see America being the wild, wild west, that's what it is. It's the wild, wild west. They don't understand it. And they really, I mean, they really can't understand it on a level where it deals with black people because they already got us stereotyped.
YouTube, where traumatized members of the public scream in fear and grief in the aftermath of this terrible crime, frantically trying to help this man that's just been murdered at work in front of everybody. Poppy was mourned by people on his side of the war, people like TB, as well as FBG Duck's brother Brick, but it would only be a month and a day later, on the 17th of July 2017, that FBG Brick himself would suffer the same fate, being spotted by 3 individuals while standing on his block at 6300 South St. Lawrence Avenue. A number of men jumped out of a car and opened fire. FBG Brick, real name Jermaine Robinson, tried to run, and the man he was with, Kobe, real name Stanley Jacoby Mack, was shot dead on sight, whilst Brick was chased into a gangway where he was sadly shot to death too. A lot of conflicting reports have circulated suggesting who was responsible for these killings, and since his arrest for the murder of FBG Duck, C Murder from O-Block has also been accused of killing Brick, while many internet detectives believe that HK, the Headshot King, played a part in this slaying too. But regardless of who was involved, once again, there is nothing glamorous about this. The immediate aftermath of this horrendous act was also caught on video in scenes that are far too shocking to show you on YouTube. Once again, as traumatized members of the public stand by as Brick's mother and FBG Duck arrive to the scene to witness and break down at the tragedy that has just unfolded in their community. After this, FBG Duck was pictured at the scene with his mother, and it was here that apparently something very important happened. Because apparently, this is when FBG Duck's mum told her son not to get revenge in the streets for his brother, but to instead focus on his music career and help his family in a better way.
And I was sitting on the ground, and him and my auntie was hugging me. And I was in my son ear and I was like, Duck, I need you. I don't need you doing nothing stupid. I say, Duck, I need you. And me telling that to my son, he went to that motherfucking studio and went crazy. That pain music out here from 17 up until he got signed.
What's interesting is that she leaving out is that yeah, he went in the studio and she might say that, but when he went in the studio, he made one of the salacious diss raps about deceased people you ever want to hear. It's on the internet. It's called Dead Bees, where it was a song directly taunting the families of all deceased people he named in the song. That's what he did in the face of everything that was going on. And remember, I told you, Terry Berry and Can't Get Right, them was his flunkies, not his brother Bricks. They was his flunkies. If you look at the footage, you're gonna always see Terry Berry and Can't Get Right standing behind him, watching his back. So when they moved on T-Roy, and then right after T-Roy, he came right on there making a joke about T-Roy. That's the same he thing. That's the same he thing. That's the same thing he did when O.D. Perry got smoked. When O.D. Perry got smoked, he dropped the song the next day. When T-Roy got smoked, he went on live. So he called himself Big Clout. You heard what he said. See, Duck was a big guy. You could tell he was a bully. That's why he never really respected Von and Dirt, because he was a bully. You know what I mean? And he really never got out there and did nothing on his own. He sent his flunkies to do it. But he underestimated. You know, bullies always have a way of underestimating the underdog. You know what I mean? That's when they end up stretched out in the street. They end up, I mean, that ain't ain't nothing more pitiful than to see a bully humbled. When a bully is humbled and brought low, you know what I mean? They say stuff like, somebody call the police. Somebody help me. I can't breathe. You know, they say stuff like that. Trust me.
That was motivation for me. Cause I could have been like, hell no, I want all them motherfuckers dead. I'm finna go kill some motherfuckers myself. Nah. See what God got planned for you, can't nobody interfere with it. Cause God already written it for your life to be like that.
Now, Duck and Brick's mother is a strong woman, but more on her later on in this story. A little while after the killing, FBG Duck goes live on Brick's Instagram account. Initially, Duck just looked at the camera looking somber, as many in the comments would type RIP Brick, telling Duck to get out of the city as soon as possible. But after 2 minutes of silence, Duck did begin to speak, and it was serious.
If you mention Brick or Kobe, you gonna die.
Duck would later discuss the loss of his brother in a Vlad TV interview, refusing to say if he knew who was responsible.
So nobody knows what happened.
Like, even if I did, I wouldn't even speak on it.
A few days after the hit, O Block members were pictured on their block in good spirits. And as time goes by, members of O Block like E-Dog would tweet publicly that more get-backs are on the way. And this time, they were looking for their most coveted revenge, hoping to kill TB for the murder of T-Roy, with HK lurking in his ops IG lives, asking where TB is at in the days leading up to the attack. Then, on September the 26th, 2017, it's thought that HK caught TB sitting on a porch, only moments away from that very same store where T-Roy was killed. And according to the
Yeah, one of my friends that subscribed to me, they were saying that I change up and I do a lot of different stories. And yeah, I do, because what I do now is I report on the stories that I follow that's interesting to me, or if it's a breaking news. So I'm gonna post what's ever trending, so that my people can be on top of what's going on. But then I'm gonna also report on stories that's interesting to me that I follow. And this is a story that I follow in depth. You know what I mean? And then it might, if you've watched this far enough into the video, it might awaken some things in your mind as it relates to what these young people is going through and what the internet has become. Because if you would notice that this whole war is playing out on Twitter, uh, Instagram, Facebook, you know what I mean? But the straps is real when they hit the street.
Incident report, shooters pulled up in a stolen black car, hopping out, firing multiple shots and hitting 2 people. TB, real name Terry Barry, was later pronounced dead at Northwestern Hospital. If HK did this killing as the internet has suggested, then this means that he personally avenged his brother, T. Roy. And it does make me wonder just how much satisfaction he truly would have gotten out of carrying out that murder. Because at the end of the day, all we have is another young man dead, and the cycle continues. Tweets around the time of TB's passing mourned him with the nickname T. Roy Slayer, seemingly confirming that TB was indeed the killer of T. Roy. And following TB's murder, of course, O Block members would tweet about there being new op packs, saying that TB shouldn't have dissed their dead friends and mocking him along with other deceased members. Boss Top from O Block would later even tweet at him directly, saying that he begged for his life. These celebrations wouldn't continue for long, however, as the following month, on the 24th of November 2017, the supposed headshot king, Heck, or HK, real name Hakeem Murray, is confronted at O Block and killed. He was shot numerous times in the body and pronounced dead at Northwestern Hospital. This is yet another tragedy. T. Roy's brother, who had just avenged his death, HK, would now be gone too, leaving behind 2 more grieving relatives in O Block, Slutty and Zell. Of course, O Block's rivals reacted positively to HK's death on social media. Meanwhile, he was being mourned by O Block members like C Murder, E-Dog, and even Lil Durk expressed his sadness at the news. But this war was far from over, and you can best believe that there was more bloodshed on the way after this incident. But what happened next surprised a lot of people, as one of the most feared members from O Block, who had been out of action and off the streets for around 3.5 years at this point, would return to the war and play a massive role in assisting the killers from O Block continue their bloody campaign for getbacks. You know who I'm talking about, King Von.
Getting new permanent teeth in 24 hours isn't just about having an aesthetic smile. It's about reclaiming the confidence.
In December 2017, King...
See, this the part of the story that I don't like is if you've been following the story, they started dissing the moment OD was deceased, and it went all the way to T-Roy. I mean, but they're painting O Block as the villains when it's less of them than it is the other guys. For real, for real.
Gets out of jail after beating all of his charges on that murder case. This was apparently the result of his co-defendant Big Mike initially attempting to put the blame on Von, admitting to the cops that he fired shots but suggesting that King Von was the killer who shot fatally, implicating himself in the crime but suggesting that he was going to cooperate with the police. Meanwhile, King Von kept his mouth shut entirely, not saying a word for the entire 3.5-year wait for trial. And once his day in court came, because he'd not said a word, Von was acquitted, and Big Mike, who admitted firing shots that night, was sentenced to 28 years, in the end refusing to implicate King Von in court at all, with Von even later dropping lyrics that suggested that a witness had been murdered in the process of him beating his case. So, while Von is celebrating being fresh home from jail, his main opposition are beginning to make waves in the music industry. In January 2018, FBG Wooski drops the very disrespectful track Computers. FBG Duck was dancing in the video, and the track itself was crammed with disses aimed at fallen members of O Block on their side of the war. He dissed Big A, J Money, OD, Chino, and more names associated with 600, a set affiliated with O Block that we're not going to focus on in this story for simplicity's sake. But it wasn't just Wooski looking to start trouble with his enemies. In February 2018, the music video for FBG Duck's smash hit drill song Slide releases. The chorus of the song is quite literally Duck inviting his ops to slide on him and fire shots in his direction. And the entire music video is basically just Duck rapping whilst toting a gun with a drum magazine surrounded by shooters, giving the camera an open invitation for anybody in Chicago to come and slide on him. Setting aside the sentiment of these lyrics, Duck was doing what his mother had told him to do when Brick passed away, focusing his energy on music rather than the streets. And sliding on a song rather than sliding on an actual drill really paid off for Duck. He allegedly signed a $2 million record deal off the back of Slide, but on the other hand, it is easy to overlook the real message of that song, which really is an open invitation for any of his enemies in the city to come and find him and kill him. Now, clearly not content with the opposition having some success in the music industry, since beating his murder case and coming home, King Von decided to use his interesting backstory to kickstart a career in drill music too. On May 27, 2018, dropping the song Beat That Body with fellow body beater THF Bezu, a track coming with insane lyrics where Von essentially cops to catching that body, beating it and saying that he plans to catch even more. Von's insane backstory would be irresistible to fans of Chicago drill music. But while FBG Duck had promised his mother to focus on music rather than sliding in the streets, the same couldn't really be said for King Von, who while beginning his career as a part-time rapper, didn't seem to have any plans on giving up his full-time role as an O-Block driller. And in the months following King Von's musical debut, killings would still play out on the street, with King Von directly plugged into the action. The next unfortunate life to be lost in this story is a friend of FBG Duck's by the name of Can't Get Right, aka Man Man. Duck is seen in a vlog hanging out with Man Man back in the day.
You got
2 game, man.
You got Facebook?
Yeah. Everything 2 game, man. Interestingly, throughout this interview, Can't Get Right is looking over his shoulder and looking out for Duck the entire time. Just goes to show you how unsafe you really are standing on these blocks. And this was in an interview where Duck shockingly says that he will kill anybody who disses him.
How come there's never any Chicago rappers really dissing FBG Duck? You know, they diss each other, but nobody really disses you for any...
But they're gonna die.
Right.
The fuck? If not for play, you diss me, I'm gonna kill you.
Unfortunately,
I'm gonna stop there because this video is a long video. But the last statement, you seeing Duck and you seeing that character, and that's what I wanted to point out, because everybody wants to cast aspersion. Everybody want to make King Von and Dirk and those young brothers villains, when I'm trying to show you that there was already a cycle that they were born into. There was benign neglect. There was people that don't care, because I'm breaking this news. I'm an older guy. I'm breaking this news, and people my age look at me like, where did that come from? Why are you looking at that? And these are young people. You're not paying attention. What news do you watch? You're not seeing what's going on with black young people. You're just getting sound bites from the news. You don't have no real information. Just think about what you've seen thus far. And I'm not even halfway. That's not even what I've shown you up to this point is not even halfway. If you want to see me do the rest of this, leave some in the comments and I'll complete it, because it's long as hell. What you've seen now, there's so much more that actually is going to happen. So, signing to you out of Detroit. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace out. Keep your head on a swivel, please.